I really like the idea of us, practicing what we preach and working on our own mental skills to try to deal with that. It's normal. Like we're performing when you're working, so it's normal in the beginning that if you have anxiety, if you're struggling with confidence, and outcome is not always, what is going to define how well you're doing, right? How good the work is.
Hello and welcome. This is Mind Rules Podcast, a program on psychological aspects of sport, physical activity, and optimal functioning. My name is Grzegorz Więcław, and by craft and training, I am a sport psychologist. In this podcast, I aim to discover divergent pathways to mastery in sport and personal development. Together with my guests, I am looking for ways to enhance performance, maintain mental and physical well-being, and create a life worth living. I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the 110th episode of the podcast and the third episode in English. My
Yay.
guest today is Janaina Fogaça, a sports psychology practitioner and researcher from Brazil, currently living and working in sunny California. What's up, Janaina?
Hi, thank you for having me. It's really nice to see you again and to be here participating in your podcast.
It's been a long time. We haven't seen each other. I believe it's about 10 years or so, maybe a little longer.
Yes, I think 2012 maybe.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's 11 years already. Holy smokes, time flies. So I'm just wondering, what have you been up to? Because you came back to my mind due to the research that you have been publishing in the past years. And this is why we meet as well. Just tell me your story post-Uvascula.
All right. Yeah, it's been a while. So I finished the master's in Finland in 2012. And then for a year I was back in Brazil. I did some random work, but I wanted to apply to a PhD in the US. I was very interested in programs that had opportunities not just for research, but also applied work because I really enjoy it. And then I applied to West Virginia University and some places that, I made connections during the international masters, which was nice. And then I ended up going to West Virginia University for 4 years. It's a kind of a combo, a dual degree again. That one was a master's in counseling and a PhD in sports psychology. And my original goal was to go back to Brazil and, do some applied work, do some consulting. And in Brazil, I was a psychologist, a licensed psychologist. So I was like, I can do like counseling, can do sports psych, and, maybe teach at the university level as well. But then things took a turn in Brazil, and it was also a lot of like a big hustle we have to like validate, my degree there. And I got some good options to stay here. And it was, the political area was very messy at the time. And even my parents, who really missed me, said, well, maybe you should stay. So we ended up staying. And my husband is a volleyball coach. So it's also, there's a lot of investment in sports here and like college coaching. So we decided to stay. I was for 3 years at University of Wisconsin, Green Bay as an assistant professor, doing some applied work, doing, a lot of professoring, teaching and research. And then we decided to move to California. So now I'm at California State University. This is my 4th year here. And I also have master's students now, which makes me very busy. So I end up not doing as much apply work and doing a lot of supervising of the master's students apply work. But I think, I'm still early career, so I have to put a lot of effort into like building up, I guess. So I do hope that in a couple of years I can, do more applied work again because I miss it.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, it's the pathway that you've described is just an example of the thing that you have actually researched, and one of the reasons why we're meeting for recording the podcast, because Janaina, together with two other great researchers, Alessandro Quattrioli and Chris Wagstaff, just recently published a paper on professional development of sport psychology practitioners. And those guys did something incredible. When I saw the paper, I was like, wow, people actually delve into this deep. And so they did a systematic review to a model of development in sports psychology. And I just like you described, post Finland, it was just a very windy road to stay in sports psychology. Like it takes effort, and you need to put up a fight in order to stay in the field, because even if you stay in research, it's hard to stay in academia, focus on sports psych work. And if you are attempting to go applied, that's wild, wild west. And there is just no beaten path, especially in countries that are not as well established as the UK or perhaps the US as well. And so I was just wondering, why and when did you get interested in researching professional development among sports psychologists? Yeah. And how come I've missed the spark of your interest? Like I'm just like observing the outcome. I've missed the process. Tell us the story, how it all begun.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I feel like sometimes I joke that, Americans have like a goal and they set smart goals and they go for it. And I feel like my path is almost like, sometimes I'm a little bit like, the squirrel that sees something and gets interested and goes. But this one, I think the professional development, it's been a couple of years that it's been building up. When I was in Finland, I was actually researching emotions and performance.
Of course. And then, what else would you research at University of Jyväskylä, where you had Professor Yuri Hanin and Montse Ruiz and all those people interested in how emotions worked in sport?
That was one of the reasons that I decided to, go for Finland instead of Greece, which is like sunny and nice. It was like, well, no, but I'm interested in emotion. So, and then, so I did that master's, and then I had like mixed experiences in my thesis. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue to research emotions in my PhD. And I had different interests. Originally, I was actually considering looking into psych of injury, that I thought was very interesting. And Vanessa Shannon was one of the professors invited to our Leipzig period, that she came from West Virginia. She taught about it. So I was like, oh, maybe I could work with her in my PhD. And then it was interesting that I got accepted to West Virginia. I went there, but then Vanessa got another job. So I ended up being supervised or advised by Dr. Sam Zizi. And he had like some background in professional development, and I was still like kind of exploring, maybe psych of injury, maybe something else. And then I started to get very interested in supervision of applied work because I had so many mixed experiences. And even in my undergrad, I had some applied experiences because undergrad in Brazil is different. So we do like a undergrad in psychology is a 5-year program, just psychology, and you get all these internships and you get a license as a psychologist in the end.
Sure.
So I had all these different experiences of supervision back in Brazil, and then in Finland, and then now in the United States. So I started to get interested. It was like, okay, what makes good supervision? They're all so different. And then I thought, well, I think that could be also something that could help me improve sports psychology in Brazil when I go back. So I was interested in supervision at first, and that's what led me to my dissertation. So in my dissertation, I followed nine I'm trying to remember, 9 diets of supervisor supervisee, and they were all sports psychology consultants were just starting. So I interviewed them right before their first practicum, and then I interviewed them right after the first semester. And I did the same with their supervisors, like, okay, how do they see the supervisee, and then how they saw their development. So I was interested in learning about, okay, how do you supervise and how are they developing? It's still a lot of varied experiences, not just supervision that accounts for development, because some, will have more opportunities for applied work and all different structures of supervision. But that was very interesting, and I did get a couple of publications from that. I did a follow-up of another semester, so a whole year following the development of 5 of the 9 supervisees from my dissertation. But I felt like it's all like when you're writing the paper, it's all like, well, they report that they, feel more confident and that, their motivation changed. And now they see how they didn't know as much in the beginning and how they have to be more flexible. And so it's a lot of things that they view. And I couldn't, like, there wasn't a questionnaire. There was a questionnaire that people sometimes use, but it was kind of off when I asked the supervisees to rate their own skills in the beginning. Sometimes they had higher rates than in the end, because at the end they knew that, like, okay, I don't know this as much as I thought I did.
It's like athletes performing the profiling tasks, right? Sometimes those numbers on Likert scales are just completely off, and they all depend on a reference point.
Yes. Yeah, so I was like, okay, I need a better way to measure my dependent variable, which is development, right? So I thought, okay, like, I see a lot of patterns in the publications that are already out there about development in sports psychology consultants. There wasn't a whole lot. There is a little bit more now, but still is not, as you saw in the systematic review, we got 34 empirical papers in the end. So I got this idea actually in 2019. I got this idea of, like, okay, maybe we can do a systematic review. And because one thing that I found when I was following up those 5 supervisees for 5 years was that it didn't completely fit the theories that we were currently using. So there's the IDM, that is Stoltenberg and McNeil, and then there is the counselor development theory by Ronestadt and Skobholt, and they are really insightful, and a lot of things align, but there are some things that don't quite align the same way. So I was like, okay, I feel like we need something that is more sports psychology specific, that account for these differences. There's like different purposes and different ways that we go about doing applied sports psych compared to counseling. And then that we develop in different ways. And then a lot of us are like previous former athletes, former coaches, and that brings like kind of a different type of identification with the client. So I was just interested in seeing, okay, maybe we can develop something that is more specific to sports psychology. I don't think it's going to be like, completely different than what is out there in counseling, but it will help me develop, have a better way to measure the development of supervisees when I'm studying supervision.
Right.
And yeah, so I ended up getting very interested in that, and it took, a couple of turns, because I was working with Ale Quartiroli in the beginning, and then we invited Chris, but then Ale got invited for a research note for JASP. So we're like, okay, we're already kind of reviewing this literature, but then we don't want to like overlap. We want it to be different. So we work on the research note that had like a deadline that was more urgent first. So we had to pause the review and then go back, screen the papers again and then pick up where we left off. So it took some turns. I started when I was in Green Bay, and it's now finally published.
These are academic meanders of completing work projects. But
Yes.
the first time I raised my eyebrow that somebody is actually researching lives of sports psychologists and their development was back in 2017 in at the ISSP Congress in Sevilla, where David Todd was one of the
Oh yeah.
keynotes, and he was famously remembered for wearing a Superman T-shirt that he just basically torn down during that keynote speech, and he was showing all those transitions that sports psychologists are completing along their development pathway. But I saw that you referenced Todd in your paper, but what is amazing, what I find amazing in your research and how you put it together, that you actually did put a comprehensive model of development that I have completely identified with.
Oh, nice.
which is very, very interesting, and I think that I'm just between the phases of exploration and consolidation at this stage of my career. Some things match in stage 2, some things match in stage 3. But
yes,
if you could tell people a little bit more about how did those stages of professional development of sports psychology practitioners unfold, like what has been proposed as a general pathway, and let's start there.
Yeah. I think this was an interesting process because so we had two research assistants. So Luke helped a lot in the beginning. He was back in Wisconsin with me, and like with the screening of papers, looking for anything that we missed with the official like keywords and going back citations and organizing. That's like such, and it's a work that I do not enjoy. It's not like a good thing for my personality. And then
okay.
And then Julia here in Long Beach was the one who was helping us with assessing papers and then with the coding later, which was really nice because I like both Ronestadt and Skovholt and then the Stoltenberg and McNeil's models of development. And but I feel like I lean more towards the IDM, and then Ale leans more towards the Ronestadt and Skovholt. And then Julia was coming like really fresh. We try like, she had to read the papers, but she came fresh in not having, her own experience as a sports psychology consultant. She was like she was in a program for students to have opportunity to research at the university. So she got like a stipend to help us out. And so when we the three of us went and like, okay, let's go like look into all the papers and see what kind of like, themes we see in this throughout these papers. And then I have my notes, which were heavily influenced by my own biases of previous knowledge, and then Ale too. Then she had like some things that we didn't think about. It was like, oh, that's very interesting. Like the first one that she said was the purpose, right? Because some things were very clear to me, like, okay, confidence is something that pops up all the time when I was interviewing this students for my dissertation and then later for the follow-up. And, I see in all papers, like the anxiety that, it's very high, and then you get more confident, it goes lower. And then, all the thoughts in your head in the beginning, like all of this is very clear to me. But then it was nice to have her and bring some new things. I
just must point out that this is a very typical story of how research in sports psychology moves forward, right? There are just two extreme perspectives, which are getting into a tug of war, and then the third researcher comes with a fresh mind and just proposes something that integrates those two extremes, and
Yes.
there's your current model, right? So it's all
Yes.
about looking for those balances between the extremes. And I just when studying psychology, I was always looking for that
Mhm.
third person, looking at the debate from a completely different angle and changing the history of the science.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it was really, really nice to have her in that process. Definitely helpful. And yeah, so you asked about the stages. And so we started with more than 9 elements, but as we discuss the themes, we figured that, well, and then we had Chris to bounce off ideas to. So he was kind of like more the critical friend role that was like, maybe this could be together and they're not separate elements. Maybe this could be together. So we discussed a lot to like just get to the elements. And then after that, we went back through all the papers and we coded the papers with those themes. So we would just like literally just get passages of the papers. And so I still have like a whole Word document of like, one is the papers with the codes, and then one is the codes with the citation for every code. So I can go back and see, okay, they said about this and this. And it's important to know because the papers are also from different stages. So like, for example, my paper, the journey of development, like the follow-up study is from, it's a first year experience for them. And then some other papers are like people 15 years later, like 20 years looking back, but then also talking about where they are currently. So you have to like
I
also.
can imagine that it's a mess to go through.
It is, yeah.
Researchers like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had to like try to place, and that was one of the criterion for our inclusion is like, okay, we need to know, like it needs to be clear what's the stage of development that the participants are in this. It doesn't have to be a stage based on a theory, but at least say, well, they have 2 years of experience or something. So we can have an idea of where to place. And then, so the stages, we were feeling like, okay, it looks like there's 3 stages, but then after that, it looked like there could be a 4th, but not for every element. So it looked to us that some elements kind of just stabilized on the 3rd. So at first we put this as just blank, but then we changed to repeat the same word from the 3rd and the 4th stage. So because the reviewer said that it was confusing if we left it blank. So
okay.
So sometimes you see in the 3rd and 4th stage the same word.
Sure.
But yes, and it's also tricky because, as you said, you feel like you are in stage 3 for something, but maybe stage 2 for something else. So there isn't really a timeline. Like it depends on the person, their experiences, and they may
but
progress.
if you look at different models of developmental psychology, like stages are just navigation points. Like it's never as linear as the model shows, but it gives you a structure and an idea, like how this career should unfold. And I think this is revolutionary for the field, because if I got that the mind map in my first year of Uvascular, I would say, not the field for me. Or maybe I would say, wow, great. Like, so this is things I need to do, and these are the things I need to focus on. These are the process I need to implement in order to develop in the field. What I was doing, it turned out to be correct things to do, but they were very much intuitive. There was no startup guide how to become a sports psychologist, because it's still a field that is not very well established in most of the countries in the world. And even in those countries that it is well established, the pathway is unclear. Let's put it that way. So sometimes organizations just fight for the certification for the sake of the certification, but then at the end of this, at the end of the process of obtaining the certification, there is no job laying out there, right? So, people commit a lot of time and effort into obtaining the certification, but it's a dead end for them, and they end up quitting from the field. And here, you actually have those phases which offer a glance of progression. And progression is something that is understandable to the sporty mind. Like, progression is usually a good thing. So if you could just name those phases for the listeners, so they have a grasp how this pathway unfold.
Yes. We were also like playing with the names a bit, and that's something that the reviewers also had some ideas to share. But the first we decided to call introduction in the end. So that's the very first phase. We're basically being introduced to sports psychology. You're a lot of times you're interested in, working with elite athletes. Sometimes there's, some unresolved issues as an athlete yourself that you really want to, okay, maybe that's the way I'm going to make it to Olympics. And so that's, you're trying to figure out, there's some anxiety in the beginning. You really like mental skills, and you think, they're it. You just have to like deliver, and that's going to make you competent. But it's still like a little rigid, a lot of like chatting in your own head, a lot of following, like mimicking of what people were doing, or maybe your supervisor, maybe people you see in conferences. They say, well, I did this intervention, and you just go there and like do the same with your clients. And then as you develop to the second phase, which is the exploration, then you start to have more realistic idea of the field and what is realistic to work with, in terms of, getting to the Olympics or something. And, but then, you start to develop some confidence. The chatter goes a little bit lower in your head. You develop better self-awareness and more flexibility to work in this field, which requires a lot of flexibility and being adaptable. Yeah. You start to kind of develop your own identity, your own ideas, and see what works for you, what feels authentic, but still kind of exploring, like the name says. And also realizing the importance of yourself as the person, delivering the interventions. This is one of the individual was one of the elements that we struggle the most to name and describe, like the full depth of it. I don't know. But at first we have this idea that like, well, this is goal setting, it doesn't matter. Like if a robot delivers all these principles, it's fine. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but the practitioner doesn't matter. And then as we develop, we realize, okay, like I have my strengths and weaknesses, and I have my cultural background and my background as maybe an athlete or a coach, or my life experiences, and that those make a difference on my delivery, my connection with the client, and how the client's going to see me as well. So in this exploration phase, we start to realize more that, okay, we matter as well. It's not just like following step by step that the book said for the intervention protocol. And then the third phase would be consolidation, which is then we're trying to like, okay, be more aligned with our values, better self-awareness. We can be more in the moment with the client. There's no chatter in the head, and it's kind of more automatic. We can do that reflection in action, and our philosophy becomes clear. We become more independent, fully flexible, and authentic in the work that we do. We realize that personal and professional values alignment is very helpful too, and we appreciate ourselves with our strengths and weaknesses, and and then fulfillment, which is the fourth one, will be someone, more experienced. And we notice in the papers that we review that the participants started to talk about giving back to the profession, mentoring younger students, and trying to make sure they can support the field. And sometimes there's still some rethinking about identity, philosophy. Sometimes there's like life events that influence those that rethinking of who I am as a consultant, what is important, what are my values. Sometimes we change values in life too. And we're not only software, but we appreciate our weaknesses as part of who we are as consultants, as people. So it's not like stagnant. You still, refining your identity, your philosophy. There's, some adjustments here and there. There's also more freedom and focus on self-care, which is not always easy when you're starting. You just have to like, okay, if I have a client, I have to take it, even if it's at like midnight on Saturday. And then as you get to that fulfillment phase, you feel like, oh no, self-care is important. I need to be, here present and functioning to help other people.
Right. So those four phases, let's just name them again so people can they can ring the right bells, because this is the case with introducing your own research to the world. Like it is so obvious for you, right? And just to make it memorable for others as well, it is my job to say that again. And those phases include introduction, exploration, consolidation, and fulfillment. And I just disclosed to you and all the other listeners that I just feel like I am a little bit between the exploration and consolidation. And this is my 12th year of practicing, which probably gives a good idea of how this timeline might unfold. Yes. Also, looking at the model, I think it is worth mentioning that when you were describing those phases, there were specific elements to each phase, and I can see that they are named purpose, confidence and anxiety, focus, awareness, adaptability, independence, philosophy, congruence, professional identity, and the individual. So this is a very, very neatly structured model of progression, in my personal opinion, as I read the paper and as I'm looking at the model again. So thank you for creating it. Like I think it probably needs refinement and
yes, always
as everything in the world of science. But the model as it is right now touches me personally because it reflects my own journey. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yeah, I think I agree. Yeah, I think we can like look and think like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense, right? In our own journeys, and I think that maybe what makes it nice to look in the format of a model. But yeah, I had different, we wanted to make a model that is like comprehensive, but also not confusing. So for example, I think we tried to explain that in the discussion, that purpose, confidence and anxiety, focus, awareness, adaptability, and independence, they are more like foundational elements that help you better develop your philosophy and congruence, your professional identity, and value yourself as an individual. But then if we try to like get to different levels in a visual representation, it will be very confusing. But I hope it makes sense as it is now.
Yeah, I understood it. Hopefully, well, we'll link up the paper to the episode notes. So if anybody is interested in going through the actual paper, they are welcome. It's open source, as far as I understand. So so anybody can access it and see for themselves. I will also plot into my social media stream and also the episode notes the model itself, because it's very well structuring the entire conversation we're having. But we're missing a piece, because all that progression, all the process of becoming and developing oneself as a sports psychologist in practice is influenced, or perhaps should be influenced, by additional processes, which, for example, distinguishes us psychologists from all sorts of mental trainers and coaches, which at least in most European countries are not recognized as a profession that is guided by some standards, for example.
Yeah, like a life coach.
Exactly. So talk us through those processes that are enriching the progression into the pathway.
Yeah, so as we were reading the papers and coding, we were initially interested in development itself, but it's just almost, I think, impossible to detach what helps you develop with your development. So we end up having a lot of codes that related to processes that supported the development of the consultants, of the sports psychology practitioners. And so as we coded, we noticed that there were 4 themes. So we developed those 4 themes, which are reflection. So the sports psychology consultants engaging in self-reflection that is systematic and, helps them think about all those elements in the end, right?
And
how
it's
they're
funny
doing.
because we teach it to athletes very often and coaches, that it's such an important piece of development and something that consolidates the development. And oftentimes we don't do it ourselves as sports psychologists.
Yes. Yeah, so we developed the theme of reflection, and then supervision was another aspect that came as a process that supported the development of sports psychology practitioners.
Did you split that into formal supervision with a more experienced colleague versus peer consultation type supervision?
No, we just got the general theme of supervision. I think, that could be something that would, because one thing that I'm interested in now, like I started with supervision, right? So I'm thinking like, okay, is there specific interventions that supervisor could do, or like, activities, or I don't know, like role play, or specific type of reflection, or just trying to like a specific way of giving feedback, or like asking questions or assignments that you can give your students if they're more like stage 1 or 2, or maybe when they evolve and you're doing peer supervision, maybe there's like a specific structure in peer supervision that could help sports psychology practitioners continue to develop. So that's like kind of the next step of like, okay, what are the details of supervision, of reflection that could, try to be intentional about supporting the development in different elements.
Sure.
But yeah, to answer your question, for this specific paper, our main goal initially was even to just look into development, and as we got the processes, it was like, okay, this is important too. We want to include that in the model.
No,
that was a whole discussion.
I guess the theme of peer supervision or this peer support sort of goes into the third process, which is connection and networking with peers. Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it could be, because we found that peer support sometimes it's from not necessarily people in the same stage that you are, but just having connections in the field, people that you can bounce off of ideas, even if you're not doing formal peer supervision meetings. So I guess you could separate. I think if I would separate, it would be formal peer supervision on the supervision, and then peer connections in the networking.
No, sure. And I think this is something that we got our generation of MSEPers and NISPers got sort of for free in terms of creating the network of like-minded people who are interested in sports psychology, both research and practice, and the connections that we got through the European Masters program, which sadly was out there only for 5 years, was part of the process why many of us decided to stay connected to the field. The same job does ENISP, which is European Network of Young Specialists in Sports Psychology, and ENISP is doing tremendous work in terms of helping young practitioners, the nexperts, as we have called ourselves once, become what they truly want to become in the field. And there is no other organization like that. And if you are listening to this and you have never heard of ENISP, please do check out the website enisp.org and come to one of our conferences, because this is where that process of getting connected and networked with your fellow peers from all over Europe, all over the world, is going to happen in the way that you have never experienced before. And ENISP has been with me throughout my career development, and I'm the former president. I'm still in the part of the managing council, and I can say again from a personal perspective that it has made wonders in terms of pushing my development forward and making me progress through the phases that Jana was describing.
Yes. Yeah, I can even give you a little spoiler because I'm finishing another paper. Because one of the things that we found in this paper is that most of the studies are with participants from the United States, Australia, and United Kingdom. So we're just finishing up a kind of a study that looks into the development the stories of development of people who did not study or work in any of these 3 countries. So, having that support, that peer support, is even more important when you are not in like a very I guess like a more of a mainstream or a well-established country with a well-established sports psychology. So I definitely support the plugging of ENISP. It's very helpful. We see in the research that people participating in this, making those connections, they feel more confident, because sometimes you're in your own country and you don't know, like, okay, am I doing this right? If you don't have those connections close to home, right? Like, am I doing this right? Am I, like, I'm struggling with this client, like, just having those like people to bounce off ideas and just normalize, yes, this struggle is real. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just hard. It really helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a tough job to be in, because it requires a lot of flexibility in terms of organizing your own time, and also it requires a lot of let's put it this way, it requires a lot of resilience, because things happen all the time. Jobs are not very stable. It sprung anxieties about the future, even the very near future. And this is not being anxious in your skills, but in the position on the job market, especially when you're going freelance. And many of sports psychology practitioners are freelancers. This is the reality of the market. So, those are just a couple of loose thoughts and reflections. But I got you off track, because there is a fourth process in the model.
Oh, yes. We're talking about the process. So connection and networking with peers will be the third, and then learning by doing is the fourth, which is part of what you have to do is to go out there and practice, and then you go back and do reflections. You talk to your supervisor, maybe with your peers, and then, you continue to reflect on that and get better. But you have to go out there and learn it and try it. And as you do more, you get your brain basically just get better at processing information and like connecting what you're hearing with the theories, and the noise in your head gets a little bit quieter.
Yeah. The way I look at those processes, and this is the way you integrated them in your model graphically as well, is that they're sort of like fuels, like so you're gonna go through phases probably anyway with the experiences that you are gonna get, and if you decide to stay in the field for long enough, you're probably gonna push yourself through those phases and develop the elements. But if you want to do it well, and if you want to nourish that development in a way, it's important to engage in those processes. And I'm just so glad that our teachers in Uvascula and Leipzig and other mentors that I've had along the way pointed out the importance of those processes. And those were not much of a surprise to me, because I'm a big advocate of engaging in all four.
Yes, great.
Yeah. Right. So here's my other question. Why is it so difficult to find a consistent pathway trajectory among sports psychology practitioners? Like in
the whole world?
Or maybe it's not difficult, and I'm just slightly biased from the experience I've had as a developing practitioner. Like, why is it so difficult in your opinion?
I think I mean, the difficulty varies, but I don't think anywhere it's easy. So for example, if I wanted to be a counselor, I could do my own private practice. There are like tons of clinics that I could affiliate myself with. And I could affiliate with health insurance, and that creates like different streams of clients coming to me. And in sports psychology, sometimes, depending on where you are, people don't even know what sports psychology is. So you have to like go there and teach and like make connections. You have to have that skill of, selling, which is also tricky because you want to be ethical.
And nobody teaches you how to do that at the university, right? Like,
yes.
Why they don't teach you? Because they don't know, because they've been academics all their life and they never had to sell themselves on the free market.
Yes.
Selling yourself in the academia is a different sport, right?
For sure.
Writing grants and getting funding is difficult as well. I'm not trying to downgrade it, but it's it's a completely different market.
Yes. There isn't a ready market necessarily. There isn't sometimes even knowledge of what we do and how it can be helpful. Sometimes people have like a general interest, but they don't have it on, I don't have it on my budget now. So there's a lot of people kind of in pre-contemplation, like, sounds interesting, but I don't know. Don't even know exactly what it is, or sometimes they still think that is more clinical work. So I think that makes it very hard. I think here in the United States, I've noticed a big difference in the 10 or 11th year that I've been here. In the 10 years I've been here, I think I don't know. I think the certification did help a little bit. I think people are more aware of the work that we do, but it's still pretty hard. For example, I try for so when I was back in Wisconsin, I opened a consulting, because I kept getting random people asking me to work with them. And then I was like, okay, I think, now I have my PhD, I can charge people. So I started an LLC, which was really easy to do in Wisconsin. It was cheap. So even if I didn't get a lot of work, I still wouldn't like lose money. So I spent some money like getting like branding and stuff, and then I still made enough money to cover that. I wasn't like rich, but I like to do the work, so okay. And then I moved to California. There was first the pandemic, and then when things started to get better, I was like, okay, I'm gonna reopen here in California. People know better what sports psychology is. And then it was really hard. I didn't know a lot of people. Like I already knew more people in Wisconsin when I started. So here I didn't know a lot of people. And then I started to go like in professional development for to learn the business skills. And they're like, well, you go to like the business council meeting and you meet people, and then they the mouth to mouth is the best way. And I was like, oh my god, I hate doing this. I'm not a seller. I like sports psychology. So I was like, okay, this is not worth all the work that I have to do for, like, it's not that much money. And it's a lot more expensive to have an LLC in California. You have to pay $800 no matter what. So to break it even, I have to make $800. So I was like, okay, to start to make like more consistent money, I'll have to put a lot more hours into this work. And then I have like master students and all these things happening. So yeah, there was like no path. I wanted to take a business class in my PhD, but then I planned on taking my last summer, and then it was canceled. So I ended up not taking it, and there's not a lot of advice, and a lot of it I think is like trying different things. And so I got oh, wait, can I move this? I got advice I don't know, like using blogs and different ways of reaching out to people, and that's also like a very slow building up. Like I can see you're in your 110th episode, so it probably wasn't like from the beginning of the podcast you're getting people coming to you. So it takes a while to build up, and it's to do well, it's a full career, and for a while you don't really know what you're doing. And it's just because I don't think we're very not that we're not very good individually, but maybe as a field of like really marketing what we do and how important it is. And maybe it's the ethical issue that we because we don't want to also say, well, we're definitely gonna improve performance. We cannot say that, but then we cannot say, oh, I work with so and so, so that makes me someone good, because that's also not ethical. So I think there's a lot of difficulties because there's the life coaches, there's the lack of clarity, and we don't market so well as a profession what we do and how important it is. But yeah, I think some sports are getting better now as well, but maybe 20 years it will
That's
be
what
better.
They said 20 years ago,
Yes.
when we started studying.
Yes.
So I think this is a great diagnosis of what's going on with the field and why is it so difficult to stay in the field. Sometimes I quote this paper from 2019, written by a kinesiology professor, and the title is very thought-provoking for sports psychology community, and it goes, "Is a profession of sports psychology an illusion?" Oh, this is really provoking question.
Yes.
But he basically shows the data, how many people graduate from the programs, how many people get excited about sports psychology, and how many stay in the field, measured by affiliate with APA, the ASP, or PEPSAC, or local national governing sports psychology bodies. So it's not a great number that actually get determined enough to stay in the field, because it is tough. It is tough, and the path is very unclear. And even though your model shows how this development might look like, everybody is going to go a different trail to reach the fulfillment, the fourth phase of the career development, I think. That's my personal perspective.
Thanks. Yeah, I
Uh,
hope it helps people.
yeah, let's see. I'm just wondering, one last question, Jana, in terms of your recommendations. Um, you have been in many roles. You are a professor, you're a researcher, you're a mentor and supervisor, a practitioner yourself, an athlete. I'm just wondering, from all those points of view, what are your recommendations for people listening to this podcast, trying to find or consolidate their pathway in sport and exercise psychology? What would you tell them?
Oh, that's a broad one. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm a big fan of the reflection and supervision. I think all those processes, right? I think they're all very helpful. It's hard to have an advice that works for everyone because especially now with interviewing people from all these different countries for the study that I mentioned, that I'm like spoiling the results. We haven't submitted yet, but we're finishing writing the paper. Um, it's like so many different pathways. So sometimes I can say, well, find a mentor, and then in some countries you don't even have a way of finding a mentor. Like there's no one there to help you. But yeah, I think definitely trying to find connections. I think I understand that it's like really expensive to go to a conference abroad if you're in a country that there isn't, a lot of opportunity, but making those connections like in NISP and, going to conferences, sometimes you can find a mentor there or maybe peers that can help you. Um, kind of emotional support and informational support, but also even tangible. Sometimes a lot of those connections turns out that you get clients out of it. So I think making connections in the field is very helpful. I think engaging in a lot of self-reflection, because sometimes we don't have, maybe you find those peers, you don't have a mentor that you meet regularly, but if you can engage in reflection of, okay, how the session went, like who am I in this process, not just like the technique, like did I do a good job with all the steps of goal setting, but like, am I, do I feel authentic, do I feel like this, this work aligns with what I want, thinking about my own philosophy, is important just performance, or are you trying to work with the whole athlete? Is your behavior aligning with what you're doing, right? In your sessions with this athlete. So just trying to maybe, I guess, go deeper into reflections, like thinking about be intentional about philosophy, reflecting about your own values and how they inform your work. I think that helps a lot with the development. And I will say I also I really like the idea of us practicing what we preach and working on our own mental skills to try to deal with that. It's normal, like we're performing when you're working, so it's normal in the beginning that if you have anxiety, if you're struggling with confidence, and outcome is not always what is going to define how well you're doing, right? How good the work is. So valuing the relationship you have with the client, and the progress that you see them doing, even maybe they're not winning or something that sometimes in the beginning people are focused on, or maybe you're not giving a mental skill every session, which is totally fine. I'm like thinking about my students now, right? When they're at the beginning, they're like, oh, here's like mindfulness, self-talk, deep breathing, just like throwing mental skills. So it's okay to to just like take a step back and then like be there and listen and connect with that client. So using reflections and connection, supervision, talking to people to also help you with your blind spots that don't come up in the reflection. I think it's all very helpful. Yeah, but I mean, there is no one thing to do, or a recipe of development. But I think when people are motivated like the way you are, and try to find the ways you maybe use the model as a way of thinking, okay, what can I do? Maybe not all of this is available to me, but what can I do, or what can I try to improve a little bit at a time?
Yeah. Yeah. Words of wisdom straight from California. Thanks so much, Jana, for presenting your own research. I guess it's not very often that a researcher gets to talk about one paper for an entire podcast.
Yes.
This is a unique opportunity, I guess. But very, very, I am so glad that you accepted the invitation, because when I first read the paper, I was very much convinced that I want you in the podcast and want you to spread the word into the sports psych community in Poland, but also in the entire world, because I'm confident that the communities such as ENISP and FEPSAC will pass this podcast on, and perhaps more people will listen to us talking.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you. I was really honored to be invited, and I had a good time talking about my research, which is nice.
Hell yeah. Our researchers love talking about their research, but not many people like to listen to them.
Yes.
Very often. Your husband probably is not very familiar with the paper, just like I'm not familiar with the papers of my partner, who is also a researcher, but outside of sports science. Anyway, what I want to mention just before we hang up is that the two previous episodes that were recorded in English is episode number 23 with Peter Schneider, which is a friend of ours. We recorded it in Augsburg when I visited Peter during his first months of job assignment in FC Augsburg Academy. We talk about how sports psychology works at a football academy. I think it's an interesting episode. And then the other one is with Dustin Wotton, which is an athlete which you might know, because it's a American libero who has played for a very long time in Polish leagues, has played for the national team as well. A very interesting guy, and an athlete with a lot of insight into how the inner work is done in pro sports, or how it might be done. It's episode number 58. So yeah, if you liked my voice talking to Jana, you have and you are not a Polish speaker, you might resort to those two other episodes in English, and I might actually make it a habit of recording in English once in a while, just to make sure my English is not getting too rusty.
So. Oh, it's awesome.
Right. So thank you very much one more time. Obrigado, and all the other. Hopefully we meet one day at a congress or a conference somewhere in the world.
It's time I go back to Europe. I just need money.
Yeah, Innsbruck is coming, the FEPSAC Congress in May 2024. So no, it's not in May, in July. Yeah. In the summer next year. So we might see each other there just before the Olympics. Right on. Enjoy the rest of your day. I am about to go to bed. So thank you again, and all the best. Thank you for listening to this episode of Mind Rules Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please share the episode with a friend, pass it on your social media stream, and leave a positive review on the platform you're currently using. New episodes are published regularly every 1st and 15th day of each month. Most of the episodes are in Polish, but in the future, I hope to grow the English library of this program. To be up to date with the new episodes of the podcast and the other projects of mine, subscribe to my newsletter and social media via Facebook and Instagram. This is also the best way to get in touch with me personally. I hope to hear back from you. Take good care and enjoy the rest of your day. Ciao!